All right, we're going to try this again because that other internet connection, that tether, just wasn't doing us any good. So, what's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic evening again. Our internet connection is not having a fantastic evening, but we are going to get through it one way or another. So, getting back to it, getting back to my public service announcement, guys. Boost weather is here. Ice cold, crispy weather is hitting us. Make sure your drag packs are stowed away properly in a heated area. You don't want the temperature of those tires really to get much below about 30, 35 degrees at the coldest. So, anyway, there's your PSA for that. Also, boost weather. Guys, gals, remember, this time of year is when stuff breaks. This is the time of year that you blow things up that normally wouldn't blow up. Jason's in saying, I'm back. Feed looks good now. Awesome. It's because of the cold weather, especially for low altitudes. Density altitude really starts to tank, and a low density altitude plus a very low humidity or water grains number means that that thing is going to be sucking in a lot of oxygen. Make sure that you are tuning and or fueling accordingly. And so that's kind of a PSA that I would put out for track rentals during this time of year. And it never fails that somebody would come in from high altitude or higher altitude. Say they're living at about 1,500 feet and they land in a zero physical altitude area, decide they want to go romp on the car, take it to the drag strip, hit a track rental. And if their combination was a little bit on the edge where they were, they're definitely going to be hurting coming down here. So it's one of those things where you just go, well, yeah, make sure you adjust your tune to accommodate. But Ardell is in, Matt is in, Jason is in, again, saying feed looks good. Ardell's saying it's minus 26 here in Montana. If you owe, like you're in debt temperature, that's too cold. Like I no, too cold. Complex is in, saying good evening, B. Good evening, Complex. Chris is saying good evening, Mr. B. Your mom's asking, is it possible to put a shaker on a Hellcat, or why do you think Dodge just didn't add a shaker to the Hellcat? Yeah, it would be possible to technically mount the shaker, although I don't know if it would it fit. I know that the unit, you could put the hood on the car. I'm just not so sure if the blower would hit the bottom of that particular hood or not. I don't think it would. I mean, it's underneath a 6'4" or a 5'7", which are the same height. The blower doesn't stick up that high, but it might stick up a little bit too high. So there might have to be something else going on there. I've never heard of anybody doing it, but it'd be cool to see somebody give it a shot. I think the blower sits a little bit too high. I think the supercharger sits about, if I were to guess, I would say about 2 inches higher. Chris saying, good evening, B. Mason. Good evening, Chris. Robo saying, evening, sir. -8 in Minnesota, headed for -15. No thanks. You know, the last time I was in any negative temperatures, I was in Chicago. That was pretty brutal. It was -7. I thought I was going to die. How do y'all's lungs survive? Like, how do you breathe that? Like, you suck in air and it felt like how can it be ice cold, but it feels like they're on fire at the same time? That's not possible, but yet I got to experience that. That's definitely no fun. Chuck's in saying, hello, B. What's up, Chuck? Michael's saying it is 60 degrees in Phoenix. It's about 55 here in beautiful Southeast Texas. However, it will be 15 degrees on Friday. So it's going to get pretty chilly down here. Your mom's checking in saying, do you think Hellcats and such are going away because Dodge ran out of ideas? They should have waited years to be in the 800 horsepower range. So no, actually, one of the reasons why the Hellcat's going away is furthering EPA requirements. But there's another side to it. The Hellcat platform, and along with this comes the GT500, the ZL1, and just start rattling off anything with a supercharger, especially anything that's V8 sized. One of the problems that you run into is you run into component protection issues. And in this case, it's catalytic converters. If you continuously hit catalytic converters with temperatures above, say, 1900 degrees, you start to run the risk of making the catalytic converters less than operational, if you will. They just don't work as well, which means the emissions levels are higher. The problem is that the Hellcat's actually been burning its candle at both ends, and in a way, one in the middle for a long time. So you've got component protection, which is the flame that would be burning in the middle of that candle. It's a byproduct of making the kind of power that these things make. And to be honest, the 6.4 is kind of in the same boat as well, as far as how fast you can spike catalytic converter temperature with that thing. Mustang is another one that has, that and the LT platform. Any of these modern V8s, they're making a ton of power. They're basically race engines. This was something a lot of folks don't realize. These are basically fairly high-end race engines from 15 years ago. That's what your pedestrian pickup truck has in it now, right? So look at it like that. So anyway, it's a catalytic converter protection. That's the burning in the middle. On one side, you've got the fact that you cannot really make any more power with 91 octane. It's a really weird situation where with all of the engine management that you can actually take advantage of today, there's only so much power that you can physically extract from a hydrocarbon molecule. And keep in mind, hydrocarbons are unimaginably efficient fuels, but there's only so much you can extract before you run into a knock threshold. And in this case, 91 or 93 octane, depending on where you live, as high as that knock threshold is, the realities of driving the car around mean that, there's, depending on cylinder head design and whether or not it's direct injected, there's a lot that goes into this, but you start to hit the law of diminishing returns here. Like, okay, well, to make another 50 horsepower may only cost another, I don't know, $1,500 or $2,000, right? But to make another 40 horsepower beyond that, so you're not even making 100 more horsepower, could require, because of fueling and because of engine management, camshaft, cylinder head revisions, and all of that, it could be tens of thousands. It's weird how it kind of ends up working like that. It's not the case of, well, you can just add more boost to it. The fuel itself won't manage. It has nothing to do with the internals of the engine. So then you can say, okay, what about turbocharging? What about other more efficient means of boosting the power, both literally and figuratively? Well, the problem with that is that, again, you run into the cost issue. One of the calling cards of the Hellcat is that, for the longest time, that car was a $65,000 or $70,000 car, which ain't cheap. But have you looked at the price of trucks lately? Anyway, you get where I'm going with this. I mean, it wasn't outside the range of what is normal, like the new normal of cost for a higher performance car, much less something that would make 700 plus horsepower. But to get it to make more power efficiently, effectively, warrantably, another way to look at it, it's just way too much cost. That's one of the reasons why you don't see a turbocharged Hellcat variant coming from the factory. Aside from packaging, it's just not a cost-effective thing to put together, whether it's from a plumbing issue, like a packaging point of view, or cost or what have you. And then you may argue, well, okay, well, what about E85? Well, the problem with E85 with a Hellcat is that not all E85 is the same. As a matter of fact, a lot of E85 is not all that great. And so what you end up with is a situation where, you can have all the technology in the world to work with the 85, but if you don't have quality E85, that's a problem. And if you don't have E85 in your area, which is kind of a shocking large amount of folks don't have E85 available to them, then it's kind of wasted technology. So in other words, to get the Hellcat or a car that is going to be Hellcat-ish or just carry the V8 further would take so much more. It is literally, like people say, we'll take it to the next level. This is like on a completely different chemical composition level. It's not just leveling up, it's leaguing up. It's in a different league altogether to really make much more than that realistically 750-ish horsepower number, that range. It's one of the reasons why it's okay. So, and that's kind of one of the reasons why the Demon is such a curious. It's funny. I'm talking about it. Behemoth. I just saw him pop up. Also, the Demon comes with high octane mode. I might have missed something. But it's one of the curious aspects of the Demon. Okay, the Demon is kind of a cheat code. So there's a few things in play when you start talking about the Demon, and one of those is, when you go into high octane mode, it is literally a different series of maps. It's not a sliding scale going from 93 to 100 octane. It is a different series of maps that are used. And if you go, well, why did they go with 100 octane? I will tell you why they went with 100 octane. Sunoco GT 260 and Sunoco 260X, I think it is. Those are the two street legal 100 octane fuels that are available. And for the Demon to be able to have a 100 octane function, it had to still work within the parameters of what is the EPA's regulations on fuels. Not all fuels, regardless of where you find them, are technically street legal. But Sunoco 260 GT is street legal in 49 states. And the GT 260X, if I'm not mistaken, is legal in all 50 states. The X is a California-specific fuel. Anyway, that's beside the point. The reality is that the Demon has the ability to switch because that is the fuel that it was tuned on, not E85, because, again, E85 is such a wonky fuel. What you guys might get in Minnesota could be completely different than what guys can get out in Utah, for example. It's just going to be all these different potential parameters. But if you have a spec fuel, I know that I can put a tune together to run on that spec fuel. And that's what they did, basically. So anyway, kind of a fun deal there. Or they'll say no Sunoco here. Yeah, you got to have it shipped in, or you'd have to get with VP. I know VP makes some. I'm just not familiar with all of them. But hopefully, and the other side of it. Okay, so you've got the fueling limitations. And then, of course, we talked about the growing EPA regulations, which are, it is what it is. Yeah, a lot of guys are learning pretty quickly that, there's some things that simply don't make any sense. I mean, what they're getting away with the Hurricane Inline 6 has got me really like, you sure about all that? I mean, cylinder temperatures have got to be pretty nutty when you're running. Well, I don't know what the air. Whoa, hey, how's it going? I didn't know what the air fuel is on those engines. I don't have a tune file for them, but I'm pretty sure they're running them pig rich. There is probably quite a bit of power to be had in that combination. Maybe one day I will find out. Let me check here. Chris is saying minus 40 C in Alberta. Oh my God. No, thanks, man. Let's see here. Jason's saying, waiting to hear your opinion on the horsepower numbers released on the new Mustang. I'm loving it, man. So here's the thing. When you're talking about the new Mustang, and I love talking Ford because, I mean, that's my background is Fords. Guys, Ford is doing something that Dodge has, for some reason, has failed to do. They are actively progressing their engine family. I'm talking about the Coyote family. You know, it's one of those weird things. 480 horsepower, 486 with the active exhaust. And that's for the GT. The Dark Horse is checking in right at 500. Yeah, leave the Dark Horse out of the conversation for a second. The GT at 486 horsepower. How's that for a middle finger? See, the thing is that now Ford has the highest horsepower naturally aspirated engine. I don't know who that was. So just kind of an FYI, there are folks heading out to Mexico this evening. And if you haven't heard them, it's happened a couple of times, but there we are very near Velocito. And so anyway, sometimes guys will run by here. If the lights are on, people that I know will pipe up when they're cruising by. So that's just folks saying hello. But anyway, getting back to it. So how does that taste, Mopar guy? You mean to tell me Ford is going to be the top horsepower in the muscle car, pony car conversation? That's pretty strange, isn't it? Considering that Dodge has been top of the food chain in the muscle car horsepower conversation since 2008. Now you can say what you want about the Mach 1, whatever, the GT500, GT350. We're not talking about this. We're talking about pedestrian, if you want to call them that, Scat Pack versus 5.0. Well, now Scat Pack ain't there anymore. So I'm excited on one hand. I'm really happy to see Ford again progressing this engine family, and nobody else has been doing it. Mopar certainly hasn't been. Conspicuously out of the conversation and kind of walking away like nothing to see here. What about Camaro guy? I mean, I know you're not going to be around, but neither is Challenger. Any talk of Camaro maybe doing something with the 6.2 liter to get up to that 485, 495 horsepower range? I'd be interested to see what Chevrolet's answer to this is, which will probably be a non-answer, but you kind of get where I'm going with this. Mustang, it took you since 2008, but then again, there really wasn't anybody doing anything that you were doing back in 2008. Memory serves me correctly. It was 2010 before Camaro finally made it back to the party. Mustang pretty much had this segment all wrapped up to themselves. And after 2024, it looks like they will continue. It will at least pick up where they left off unless Dodge does something overwhelmingly awesome and brings back the Conquest, if you know what I mean, talking about that Hurricane Inline 6 and a smaller platform. Get out there and play with some of the Japanese guys, as well as that new hot rod from Ford in the Mustang. Plus, it would be a really good transition. Just, kind of spitballing here, but 400 horsepower and then 500 horsepower in a small platform, that'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, getting back to it. Again, what's not to love? Ford's really going out of their way to keep the enthusiast involved. And I'll take this a step farther. The weird thing about the Mustang is, love them or hate them, Ford does two things really, really well with the Mustang. One is transmission tuning. Guys, transmission tuning is on point with Ford, with that 10-speed. And say what you will about durability with that thing. I will tell you that the tuning of that thing is, I mean, it's a thing of beauty. The way that it shifts, hard, crisp, everything about it just screams enthusiast minded. Take that and add it to an engine that is free revving and all but seemingly bomb proof and is the darling of the aftermarket, and coming from a manufacturer that has literally written the book that I used to study that started me off in tuning and in hot rodding so many years ago. I would say that it's Mustang just reclaiming their rightful place. I'd love to see Mopar do something to answer that 486 horsepower. I would like to see something along the lines of maybe a 500 horsepower. Something has been done slightly different. The last hurrah of the V8, do something cool, please, Dodge, for the love of all that is Mopar. Do something awesome. It's okay to do something awesome. It's okay to be cool. You know, you don't have to just sit there and hide behind marketing hype. It's okay to have a little bit of substance behind you. I mean, look, listen, I mean, we're talking hardcore, clean out of the park home run with the 6.4 liter and the Hellcat variants. The 5.7 is no slouch either, but the reality is that you're living off of nostalgia that is only, 7 years old? Depending on how deep you go back, 10 years old with the introduction of the 392. So I am bummed that there's not more of a fighting spirit with Mopar. You know, it's like the big guy, it's the big engine, but it's like Mopar got punched in the face and they just sat down. It's kind of a bummer, really. You know, you'd really want to see them come out of the gate and just wow everybody with something that's worth shelling out paper for. Because I'll tell you guys something, you know, with my local track shutting down soon, I'm not going to be able to get pictures like what's hanging out over me for much longer. And although it'll be a lot of fun to reminisce, I've got a lot of fun videos, lots of ride-alongs. I'm reminded of the fact that this thing on the street, especially when it's cold outside like it is now, is a freaking handful. I mean, yeah, I can put it in 500 horse mode and play with it, but I mean, I don't get the transmission shift that the Mustang does. There's so much more just doodads and just cool things that the Mustang can come with. Got to tell you, big fan of that new Mustang, and can't wait to see if Mopar is going to have an answer for it. Ardell saying, I wish I was in Arizona reading -35 tomorrow. Hey, Ardell, think of it like this, man. You guys are going to be 95 degrees off of each other. Jeez Louise. That's like being 0 degree, the difference between 0 degrees and 95 degrees. That's nuts. Speed Freak saying, seems awfully difficult to find dealerships who can even order a Hellcat for 2023. Rose to Corvette level, no longer for the average guy. Oh, dude, listen, the Corvette. Listen, I am so far beyond the new Corvette that listen. Okay. So for you guys that don't know, I've got a whole lot of Corvette experience. I spent most of my childhood riding in Corvettes. Different family members all had vets of some kind growing up. Friends, dads, friends, uncles, friends, moms rolled the Corvette, okay? It was a cool car. It was a sports car, V8, still muscly, but very sporty. Very cool car. I've owned 2 Corvettes in my life, my Z06 and my 93, which I should never have gotten rid of. It was my Barbie vet, black, gray interior, automatic car. I loved driving that car. Just a chill, fun, would cruise at 110 miles an hour, like just a fun. Anyway, electrical problems. Kind of like my Hellcat. Anyway, the reality is that it was an every man's cool car. And it was like, hey, got a vet, man. Cool. That's awesome. Been putting in that overtime, right, Frank? That's right, buddy. Been putting in that overtime. Picked up that new account. Yeah, took over that account from Mike, man. He didn't want to deal with it anymore. It pays me enough to cover the cost of the car. It was stuff like that. Guys would work the extra hours. The folks would take on the extra account. You would cover that shift or whatever so you could have that thing. And it's just not like that anymore. And so, it's, to me, the vet really, it's got to get over itself. It's not interesting to me. A DCT transmission and all the electronic butterflies that it's got does just nothing for me. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I know that that's really not necessarily speaking the language that a lot of folks are talking about that car. A lot of folks have a lot of great things to say about it. You do you, boo. I'm not going to be in there for it. So, Robo saying that Hellcat speedways were going away as a huge fines that Fiat was paying for not meeting EPA standards for their lineup average. The funny thing is that the Hellcat actually can knock down really good fuel economy numbers, especially on the highway. But there's a lot of stuff. Most of the V8s today, by the way, guys, don't meet EPA standards. And for one reason or another, there's a kaleidoscope of reasons that it could fail, and most of them do fail. Shane saying, Merry Christmas, Mopar family, and a very happy 2023. Same to you, Shane. Keep it real. Remember that Jesus is the reason for the season. That's right. That's why it's called Christmas. Ardo saying, Merry Christmas be to you and everyone. Same to you. Your mom's asking, is the only difference between the super stock and the Demon, the weight transfer and hood and the one extra horsepower? You've got the 100 octane mode. The brakes are different. Technically, the calipers are different on a super stock up front. Springs are different. And along with and somebody's going to have to correct me on this, but along with it doesn't have, does the super stock have drag mode? I can't remember. Anyway, there's a few little things that are different, but functionally, realistically, I mean, aside from the high octane mode, they're basically the same. Robo's asking, with all this is a good question, Robo. I love this one. With all of your data logging, have you found much that Dodge left on the table for power on 91 over the factory tuning? The AFR seems spooky lean, so I'm assuming timing is pretty mild. You are flipping wrong, brother. I wish you were right about that. My man, here's the thing with the Hellcat. The Hellcat rides knock sensors like you would not believe. If it weren't for the knock sensors, you would blow the thing up on some sketchy 91 octane. I thought the exact same thing that you did. That when I initially started looking at the tune file, this is years ago, I was like, damn, you got to be able to throw timing at this thing. I mean, look at this, man, 700 horsepower, but dude, you got to be throwing time. If you saw the timing numbers, you'd be like, what? Are you serious? The data logging with a stock Hellcat, the command AFR, for you guys that don't know, the command AFR in a stock Hellcat's 12.7 to 1 AFR. And that, to put into perspective, is leaner by not an insignificant margin, but it's leaner than I command on naturally aspirated Hemis. And the reason for that is there's questionable distribution, and you want to make sure that you're running a little bit on the fat side. The Hellcat running at 12.7 is leaner than some LS guys even try to get away with their cars. So what the factory does is the tune itself, depending on the year, there's some like crisscrossing with some of the table. Well, the table itself, the wide open throttle timing table, along with the partial throttle timing base tables. Like if you're comparing a 2018 to a 2016. There's some areas where a 2016 has more timing in it. And then there's other areas where a 2018 has more timing in it. They just kind of blend through. It's almost like you can have a rounding difference between two calculations. It's kind of like it's the exact same thing, but like an interpolation table difference. And what's funny is that there's more to the tune than that. But when you data log a Hellcat, if you guys remember me data logging Buffy, my work truck, where you tip into the throttle, even at cruise, it would pull timing for seemingly no reason. Like, where's the noise coming from? A Hellcat at wide open throttle, it is absolutely not uncommon for it to be pulling 2, 3, 4 degrees of timing. It's just the way that it is, especially on 91 octane or sketchy 93 octane. And it's going to be pulling timing throughout the run. Then you add to that, the thing goes into cat over temp like that. Like the second you go to wide open throttle, if you're on the highway, you've got about one full pull after that first shift or whatever you're going, like you're going 65 miles an hour, watt the throttle. Yay, fun. Hit the shift. You're already in cat over temp. So, and one of the funny things is retarding the timing, in some cases will net a little bit of a power gain, and then throwing the fuel back at it where it should be will also get you a power gain. So believe it or not, so stupid, I know, but you can actually pick up power by pulling timing in some areas with the car. And that's actually what I've done with my car. A lot of folks are like, how much timing are you running? I'm like, not as much as you might think, which is a literal statement. I'm like, is it stock? Not as much as you might think. It is what it is, guy. I mean, it's kind of funny, really. But you can tune, a lot of it is noise. And the knock sensors are extremely nanny-like with where they're set from the factory. And that's no secret. Everybody knows that. You still have to keep them in play. But back in the day, tuners would just render through the commanded voltage that they would, the window that they would give them in essence to look at. They would put it so high just to, in essence, render them inoperable. And so what would end up happening is when you needed them the most to work, when you really have legit knock, they just wouldn't be there. So it's funny to me because the Hellcat, I'll put it to you like this. This is no joke. You guys that have played around with these things will know what I'm talking about. That my Hellcat has a higher commanded at wide open throttle. My Hellcat has a higher commanded timing value everywhere where it matters than my truck does. My Hellcat has higher commanded timing where it matters than a Scat Pack tune does, in many cases anyway. So without getting into specifics, so the answer to the question is the same. I am answering the question the way that I discovered the answer is no. That's why you don't see a lot of power getting gained through just tuning alone. This is true of any Mopar. But the Hellcat is the one that surprised me the most. And the Scat Pack was the one that surprised me the most with its with it not being very sensitive. Its insensitivity to timing was a weird one for me with the Scat Pack. And again, y'all have heard me tell stories about having these cars on the dyno and just doing, power sweep after power sweep. And I mean, I would just, I'd make quick pulls. I'd do, 4,000 to 6,000, 3,000 to 3,000 to 5,000. Just try to, pick a spot where I could make more power, just focus on one. And You throw a ton of fuel at it, a degree of timing, and that's what it seemed like they liked a lot. So it was like anything after that, the cars just didn't respond. We had pretty decent fuel too. The memories. Yeah, but yeah, I rowboat. I'm telling you, it's funny how. Now, there are areas where it is a little bit shy. I will admit the timing table. But in fact, it's easy. And Behemoth, if he's still on, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's easier to tune a stock boost Hellcat than any other car in Dodge's arsenal. That's no joke. Kid you not. So, X is in with the flex. I like it. RL saying no 85 here in Great Falls, Montana yet. That's a bummer. Tiger saying good evening, sir. Take two. This season's a lot better. Nice. Ardell does not have Sunoco either. So I'm saying, hey, B. Robo saying the E85 is hit or miss for being remotely close to the actual E85. Lots of E60-ish being pulled. Yeah. I'll tell you what, he was saying Big Rich for sure. To give you guys an idea, when these cars go into cat overtemp, and this is for naturally aspirated or for the supercharged applications. So let me kind of walk you through what an old school tuner guy would see in the emotional roller coaster that this person would go through. For naturally aspirated, used to be the going AFR if you're going off of like 14.7 as a true AFR. Not, in other words, I'm not going to get into the lambda part of it because it's easier just to talk in the general parlance of what we're doing here. If you're doing 14.7 stoichiometric, E10 is actually 14.10. But fun fact for you Hellcat guys, you know when it's showing stoichiometric, but it's at 13.7, that's actually or 13.8. That's actually the stoichiometric value for E15, which is was a proposed higher octane fuel at one point. Go figure. Anyway, the cat overtemp. Oh, well, let me get back to what I said. Okay, so stoichiometric, let's say 14.7. Naturally aspirated power enrichment, you would see something around 12.5 on a partial throttle power enrichment is what you would be kind of targeting. Some guys would lean it out on the big end to 13.0. For more of a street-oriented tune, you'd see like a 12.4. It's about as rich as they would go, okay? Boosted applications, you would never see anybody going richer than like an 11.4, 11.5 at wide open throttle. Power enrichment mode, like just, loaded but not full load, you'd see like in the 12.2 range. It's kind of what you would hope to see and target for that. And then anything richer than, say, 11.0 would be like if you're in the 10s anywhere, you were considered to be just simply too rich. And you were going to need to lean the mixture out. You're leaving some power on the table, but you're throwing too much fuel in the cylinder. And again, this is really more for the boosted stuff, but I mean, it's not doing you any good. It's not cooling the air charge, and you're wasting fuel, potentially washing down the cylinder walls if you're staying in that air fuel range for any real length of time. By the way, fun fact, World War II aircraft engines were tuned to run at about 10.5 to 1 at wide open throttle, which would be, in this case, not war emergency, but maximum output power. 1710 would be about 850, 900 horsepower. Anyway, that'll give you an idea as far as hot rodding and where all that stuff came from. Anyway, the Hellcat, boy, I'm just off on all kinds of tangents. That's what open chats do, though. We need to talk about all kinds of stuff. The cat overtemp number. Now, remember, we don't like to see anything in the 10s, right? The cat overtemp number I've seen as rich as 9.4 to 1. 9.4 to 1 is where people on a dyno, if you see it, immediately lift because you're worried about practically hydro locking the thing. In other words, you've got so much fuel mass in that cylinder that it's starting to get dangerously close to the point where you can damage something. And that is what the stock Hellcat will command in some cases with cat overtemp. And for sure, 10.2, 10.3 is practically, you can bet that it's going to get there. Another thing, my truck, Stormy, was a 10.5 is what it was commanding when it got into cat overtemp. You can believe that. Chuck saying, my fear is that my Scat Pack will eventually not be inspectable and it will end up a yard ornament. No, don't have to worry about that. That's all grandfathered in, man. Don't sweat that. Sovereign saying, hit that like button. Yes. Your mom's asking, what is the difference between a normal Hellcat engine versus the Demon engine if they're both 6.2, or am I wrong? No, you're exactly correct. They're both 6.2. The Demon is going to have, okay, so let's start with the things that are the same. Cylinder heads are the same. The crank is the same. The rods are the same. And the block's the same. That's about where the oil pump is the same. The water pump's the same. Basically, all that stuff is the same. What's different is the red eye and all the red eye variants. So red eye, super stock, Demon. Technically, the red eye and the super stock are Demon variants, but we'll just kind of let's not clutter it here. The difference between the two engines is, aside from the supercharger, the red eye is going to have different pistons. They are going to have a slightly different camshaft profile. It's got a little bit more exhaust duration. And obviously the supercharger, but we're not really going to count that in this respect. The valve springs in the cylinder heads are slightly different also. And that's with a nod to really more along the lines of valve train stability above 6,500 RPM. One of the things that folks learned on pretty early with these Gen 3 Hemis, and all Hemis to begin with, it doesn't matter which generation it is, they all have a little bit of an inherent flaw, and that is valve train geometry. In other words, the direct line of sight from the camshaft lobe through the lifter, through the push rod, to the rocker arm, to the tip of the valve is not a direct line of sight like you would see in an LS, for example. And I'm not talking about the LS3 with the offsets. I'm just talking about, you know what I'm getting at. So with the Hellcat or with any of the Hemis, you've got a really big intake valve that's heavy. Okay. You've got a shaft mounted rocker that's offset. So that creates a friction point. You've got a relatively long push rod, and you have a relatively aggressive camshaft. All of that is adding up to bend push rods. And that's what a lot of guys were doing early on with these engines, is that they were trying to turn them to an RPM that would be appropriate for the type of cylinder head that they're working with, only to find out that the valve train stability was compromised because of valve train geometry. So anyway, the little bit stiffer springs help to eliminate the risk of having component failure. So those are the only real differences, aside from the fact that the Hellcat block is orange and the red eye and all the rest of the red eye variants is a red block. That's it. Nothing really any different aside from that. Sovereign's asking, what is your opinion of a 2011, 2012 Challenger? Were they 6.1 or 5.7? If so, how good are the engines? They're really good. I would go 6.1. I would probably not mess with an 11 or 12, 5.7. Kind of an issue with some valve seats there. Oh no, wait, that's the later one. That should be actually an Eagle in that one. Yeah, they're fine. That's the Nag one. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. They're great. I really wouldn't worry at all about them. If you can find a car with a 6.1, get the 6.1. It's just in my opinion, a better. It's just a better engine all the way around, and it's probably, if I were to pick a favorite, probably my favorite of all the Gen 3 Hemis, because it's more of a traditional, kind of an old school, back to basics type of a hot rod engine. One of my favorite combinations, by the way, is a 6.1 with, basically like a 410 or a 420 cubic inch stroker combination. Basically, stock intake manifold, leave everything more or less untouched as far as the visual, bump up the displacement, put a 232, 240 cam in it, with a set of, 11-to-1 pistons, lobe separation angle of about 112, 113 degrees, intake center line of about 110, and that thing will be so much fun. Hardell saying Ford has done so much, the Mustang will dominate. Well, yeah. But he was saying the crank, rods and pistons. Are the rods different? I can't remember. I always get that screwed up with those cars too. And one of the reasons I seem to get that screwed up so much is because nobody ever swapped out rods. I mean, they did kind of do if you got it apart, but guys would still do drop-ins and were fine well over 1,000 horsepower. I don't know. If they are different, I believe they are still powdered metal. Sovereigns are 2011, 2012 Challengers reliable? Yeah, as long as they've been kept well, absolutely they're reliable. Patrick's asking, are Ford Mustang Coyote engines and auto transmissions pretty reliable? I can tell you that the Coyote engine is. The 10-speed automatic has a low threshold for modification in terms of, like, if you're really going to start throwing power at it, I would limit it to somewhere around 650 horse. Actually, I'd limit it to about 600 horse to the rear wheels. And treat that 10R90 as you would treat the HP 70 in a Challenger. That is the limiting factor for those things. But I mean, if you're leaving it stock, for the most part, they are. Like I say, there are a few more complaints about issues with that transmission, but than the Mopar stuff. But for the most part, they're pretty stout. Liam is saying, I'm sad to see GM and Mopar giving up on the V motors, it seems. Yeah, I am too, man. It stinks because there's still a lot of room to improve, but I just feel like they're just letting it slide. Ardell saying Ford will be muscle car king. Yep. Chuck saying Ford is the smarter company. I would agree with that. They've figured things out that everybody else can't seem to get figured out. Sovereign saying, I think Stellantis is really tying Dodge's hands. Yeah, but the thing is Stellantis would make, like, you don't kill a market segment that's thriving unless you have a lot of pressure to do it. Get out there and vote. Ardell saying, I would love to see Dodge go forward and make a big bang with the muscle cars. If they could, they would. I'd love to see it too. Chuck, yeah, I responded to your email. My brother-in-law had an Element. Love that thing. Ran it into the ground too. Cat Boost saying, how's it going tonight, my man? Something I've been thinking about when I get around to the Eagle head swap. Do you know if the active runner truck intake will fit under the hood of an LX? It won't. The problem is, from my point of view, like, so that intake snout goes up into the passenger side. I do not believe that it will fit at all. And actually, the 5.7 intake is, believe it or not, it's actually a pretty good intake. Oh, Captain saying I can get one for a good price. I think it might be worth it, even if I have to modify the intake. I probably would not do that. It's too much of a headache, and you're really not gaining a whole lot. I mean, it is a better intake manifold technically, but unless you're going really nutty with the power level, you won't see a big difference between the two. We're talking onesie twosies on the big end. Now, if you're putting a stroker combination together, I would say that it would be more important to put a better intake manifold on it. RL saying, I agree with you, B. I do not like the C8 Corvettes too. They're not my style. I want them to be. That's the thing. It's like I want to like them, but I just can't get there. Robot saying, so the Hellcat would benefit from over octane. Yes, it does. Actually, I tested this. Some Sunoco 100 octane for better and more consistent performance stock trim. Yes, it does. So what I found with my car is 100 octane in bone stock form was worth about 1/10.5. Go figure. Now that's admittedly with, you got to really get it right. You've got to run the car on 93 octane, get some baseline runs, and then run it with 100 octane, get some baseline runs. But I can tell you that in somewhat similar density altitude, my car was running, and this was stock with the stock gear, was running 1072, I think, like 1072, 1074, and on 100 octane gas. Take it back, it was almost exactly 1/10. It was running 1062. So I was a little bit off. It was 10, so about 1/10 of a second. And the data showed it too. I mean, it was real happy on 100 octane. X is asking, are you running Boostain for fuel insurance this winter? I need to get some more. No, I am not. So the goal for my car is to run a number on straight 93 octane. And more to the point, I want it to be, originally it was, I want it to run the number on street legal gasoline. I don't want to run something that, it's just like, how do you like lock in like a spec that you're trying to run, right? Like a spec series, if you will. In my case, I was initially like, hey, I'm just going to run on 100 octane, no additives, no Boostain, no nothing like that, because technically that's not legal, if you will. Well, then I had done that, and I did the testing with the 100 octane. In fact, I use it for my trash can. That thing's about 2 or 3 years old now. But I was like, well, what can I get out of this thing on 93 octane? And so that's where all of this kind of got started. And so there's only maybe 4 or 5 of us left that are still pushing the 93 only octane numbers, right? And the reason for that is that if you put a tune together to, like, if I say, okay, I'm going to tune my car for 100 octane or 104, 109, whatever the number is, it's not really, to me, it is, but it's not still a street car. So I would rather, instead of trying to game the system, let me see what I can do on just straight up 93 octane. And so this year, just so you guys know, the car has run a best of a 1013, and that was was that 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago? Ran a 1013, and that was in basically flat DA, but I had run the car earlier that day with real low DA, but the humidity was high. And for those of you guys that may not be too familiar with the effect of humidity and density altitude and all that, negative number density altitude, good. Relative humidity above 55%, bad. And so anyway, my car got faster as the day went on. And it was, like I say, straight 93 octane. The data was great. The data looked fantastic. In fact, I was data logging the car for probably half the passes that I made. Data looked great. In fact, I quit data logging, didn't need to anymore. And the car went the quickest at what is, in essence, it was negative 200 DA, which for those of us that are always looking for numbers, you kind of go, okay, negative 200, 0 DA, plus 200. You can fudge that. Yeah, it's basically 0 DA. You won't really give anybody any more than that, but give somebody some slack because of humidity conditions. And as the day goes on, humidity typically will drop. And so my car is just taking advantage of a slightly lower humidity number and okay air. What's funny about that 1013 is that when I ran a 1008, it was freezing cold. I mean, everybody's wearing jackets, got the beanies on, everything else. When I went to 1013 with the latest iteration of the tune, I was out there with a t-shirt and I was sweating. So it was just kind of it's a relatively warm day, as far as cold days go, if that makes any sense. So, but yes, if you want to run 100 octane, do it. And I don't have anything against boostane. The stuff works. Just use it in small. It's like salt. If you can oversalt the soup on accident, right? So just follow the instructions. Get you a beaker. In fact, here. If you're going to run it, get you a graduated beaker. And, for half a tank of gas, just, I did that video with the chart, an ounce and a half, 2 ounces at the most is really all you need. And that'll put you about where you need to be as far as octane. The stuff works. And I've done testing with it and it worked pretty good. But if I do any like really cold weather testing, I will probably just run over to like Hyperfuels and get some either 98 octane, which is a great alternative to that's the oh heck, I can't remember the name designation of it because I don't ever use it. But there's a 98 octane that's a good alternative to mix in with gasoline just to basically cut the gasoline with something a little bit better. Mix that on like a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1 ratio with gasoline and you'll be good. Same goes for 100 octane. You don't have to run it on just straight 100 octane, but if you just want to ensure your fuel quality, that's another way to go about doing it. So we're saying like, subscribe, share. Yes, please do. X is saying, love the avgas. You got to be careful with avgas. You need to check the oxygen content of avgas because some of it is highly oxygenated, as you would imagine, especially for piston stuff. For the guys that are running naturally aspirated engines at any altitude above like 7,000 feet, they're going to want to have a fuel that is oxygenated. So just watch out for that. Just in other words, make sure that your oxygen content isn't above 5 to 7%. That will cause a need to change the tune. It can cause the car to go lean. Speed Maniac Sam, what's up, man? Just saying what's up, brother B. And brother, these tracks closing are getting out of hand. I'm sure you've heard about what's going on with Cletus's Freedom Factory. Haven't heard. Is he getting touched up now? What's the deal with that? School me. I have no idea. I'm hoping that's not the case. Sovereign saying, sweet. Your mom saying, so the normal Hellcat and Demon basically have the exact same engine. From an architecture standpoint, yes, 100% the same thing. Internals, little bit different, but the stuff that matters, the displacement, stroke, the crank, very, very, very similar. Let me put it like this. The Red Eye, Demon, Super Stock family of engines, they are technically superior from a durability standpoint than the Hellcat, but only technically, like only on paper. Let me give you an example. There are, at this stage of the game, so many 1,000 horsepower Hellcats that are running around without a care in the world. With stock bottom end, stock blowers for that matter. I mean, it seemed like some areas are infested with them. So for all practical purposes, they're identical. Yes, there are some differences that make the Red Eye variants technically better, but functionally, it's basically the same stuff. Robo's saying, I'll take a C7 all day over a C8, you and me both. C7 is one of my favorite cars to drive. Robo's saying, thanks for asking my questions. Absolutely. Got to get some sleep, work stuff tomorrow. Until next time, we will catch you later. Ardell saying, I wish I could get 93. We have 91. Yeah, that kind of stinks. Next is saying, I hear you. I like it. Ardell saying, I like the C7 Corvettes, just cannot get into the C8s. I love me some C7. SRT Superstock saying almost January 7th. Yes. So, yeah. So remember, guys, January 7th is coming up quick. If we have more weather like what we're having, and it's going to be relatively cool and dry, if you got your car set to kill, just make sure you got the fuel to back it up. That's all I'm asking. Because it's promising. This could end up being a really fast year. So that's what we're hoping for. Oh, Chuck's checking out saying, thanks for finding my email, B. Got to go. Early day tomorrow. Get some rest, big guy. We'll catch you on the next one, buddy. Always good seeing you. X saying, yeah, I remember you talking about it last year, and I would put up that about that much boosting in my tank to help control fuel quality. Absolutely. In fact, where is, please, let me see if I still have that chart for you guys, because now would be a good time to discuss it. Hey, here it is right here. So later on, if you want to, bro, just go ahead and come back in and hit pause. But there's your boosting chart that I came up with. And it's got, costs, estimate costs, things like that for you guys. So hopefully that helps you. That'll be ounces per gallon, roughly the octane. So the first two are the ones you want to look at. So hopefully this thing's not coming in backwards. But if it is, let me work y'all through this real quick. Ounces per gallon. If you mix in basically 1 ounce per gallon of gas, it'll give you 100 octane. And that's really the only realistically relevant, not to mention financially relevant number that you're really going to be looking for. For most guys on the street that really aren't trying to lean on their cars like a 10% lower with a 275 upper type of combination, that's going to put you right where you need to be. So hopefully that helps. Nothing back in there. All right. SRTs say he likes the Octanium. I've heard good things about it. I like Boostain is really good. It doesn't come out of suspension. Speed saying they're building a subdivision right by the Freedom Factory, which when the neighborhoods go up, track goes away. I hate to hear that. Oh, SRT Super. Oh yeah, the heads flow. Talking about the difference between the Yeah, the heads are the same. I mean, it's the same head, just different different valve springs. That's one thing, man. These Hemi heads are unbelievably high flowing. It just blows my mind. The Hemi head flows all basically the same as a set of LS7 heads, if you can believe that. It's kind of neat to think about. X saying, thanks, B. Thank you, X. Oh, your mom's asking, do you think if I get a super stock and want to make it identical to the Demon, would it take a lot of money to buy the hood along with the rest of the parts? Not really. I mean, they're all offered by Mopar. So, I mean, you can get them. The one thing you won't be able to do is get the 100 octane. You won't have that ability to make that switch, but you can always put the Demon springs on the car. And really that's all you would have to do. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong about the springs on the super stock. I don't think that those are the Demon springs, but realistically, I mean, aside from that and the front sway bar, now that I'm thinking about it, you would want to swap the front sway bar for a Scat Pack sway bar. Save a little bit of weight with that too. I would leave the stock, super stock brakes on the car. I mean, nobody are, oh yeah, SRT saying super stock springs are different. I would leave the super stock brakes on the car. I wouldn't see any reason to swap those out. But you said it does have the same sway bar. Okay, so that's even better. That's one less thing. You know what? I tell you what, if I got my hands on a super stock, I would leave it a super stock. And the only reason why I say it like that is because, hey, are they the same calipers? I thought the front calipers were different on the super stock. Is one of them cast and the other one's forged? Am I remembering that correctly, or am I misremembering that? I don't have a whole lot of experience, but I know that I was thinking about swapping over to the super stock front brakes on my car. They're all the same. Okay, cool. And the main reason was just to get the weight savings out of it. There's a relatively significant difference in the weight between the super stock and the rotors are different. Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking about. There is a difference between the weight of the brakes on the super stocks and Demons for that matter, and the regular Hellcats. Fairly significant, by the way. And it's one of those things, but this is the deal with my car. And at some point, you almost go, man, like I could get away with putting Scat Pack calipers on my car and Scat Pack rotors. It would be significantly lighter than the Hellcat stuff. But, at some point, when does my Hellcat quit being a Hellcat, right? And I just kind of like the idea of, still having the DNA of the Hellcat still there, but it's all kind of parts bin stuff anyway, right? So anyway, with the track going away, it makes it kind of hard to justify it. But X is, SRT's schooling us over here. Same aluminum calipers. Why was I thinking they were different? The rotors are different. Still lightweight though. Yeah. That would make sense. X is saying with all these damn minor differences, it's hard to keep it straight. SRT Super's like, Hellcat's the baddest. Well, of course. No, I really like my car. And, if we were going to have a track for another 5 years, I would probably swap the front brakes. But SRT saying the 2020 Superstock got steel. Okay. I would probably swap over to a lighter, but still factory front brake setup. But that would require effort on my part. I just don't know. Plus, my car it's still a street car. We use it for road trips. You know, it's still very much very much a grand tour, very much a road trip car at heart. So, but now that we got Stormy, that might be a little bit different story. But you know, it's just at some point, I really wanted to swap the front brakes, though. I have to admit, there's about what is it? SRT, is there like a 30-pound difference up front, though? I mean, it's a significant difference. And so what I ended up doing is that's when I put the Scat Pack front sway bar in the car. I really did think why did I think that the Super Stock had the Hellcat front sway bar? I don't know. I'm getting some facts mixed up and backwards. But anyway, one of the things that I had done was put the front bumper support and the Scat Pack sway bar in the car. Because number one, I wanted to run a sway bar because I'm not going to be swapping them out all the time. And not that it takes any real amount of time to do it, but I'm lazy. Plus, there's like a certain, how do you put it? There's like a certain amount of the car that I still want to be the car on there. Not that it makes me or it any better or whatever compared to somebody else's track prep. It's just the philosophy that I came to was, you know, parts bin stuff, lighten it up the same way they lighten up a 1320 and let it rip. So X is saying, I don't think I've ever seen a Super Stock, probably because I'm in Alabama. Now they got Super Stocks in Alabama. I promise you that. They're floating around there somewhere. But I got to admit, I mean, I love the Demons, love the Super Stocks. And I just always going to be a big fan of those cars. But mine is a little bit different. First release, that probably if I'll put it like this. I would have spent the money if my car was a later 2015 or a 2016. I probably would have swapped the brakes on it. But because it's an early release 2015, or an early build, I should say 2015, I just don't want to go that route with it, even though I did paint my calipers black because my calipers were turning pink. I did paint them black. And I prefer the look of it too, with it being red line red. Siren saying, when I got a chance to be with that Demon for a few minutes, I never forgot that feeling. It was unreal. Like saying, probably in the major cities, not the boonies. Yeah. So you guys know, I mean, it's kind of a funny story. When the Demons were first released, we had a customer that wanted us to do a full-on build on his car. And so we were using it for a bit of a test mule for the better part of, it's been about 3 months, I think is how long we had that car. And so I got tasked with the enviable position to be the guy that ran all of the passes in that car at the drag strip. And so I was one of the first people that anybody saw or that anybody watched a Demon run a 9-second pass. I was actually driving that car when I did run a 9-second pass in that car. But it was funny because, it's a Demon. And I love that. I mean, the Demon is the reason. Okay, let me put it like this. The Demon is one of the reasons why I bought my Hellcat. The Demon and you guys that have the Super Stocks and a 309 geared red eye, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about when I say what I'm about to say. Those cars and a properly set up 309 geared Hellcat like mine is, they are the happiest car on the freaking road. They are, somebody's heading out. They are the funnest car. They're it's like if a Labrador retriever could like that vibe could be put into a car. That's what the car felt like. It was just always in a good mood. It was just such a fun car to drive. And anyway, I made close to I'd say 30-ish passes in that car at the drag strip. I would say probably more than that, probably about 35, maybe not 40. Actually, I probably made close to 40 passes. I'm not going to say 40 because I don't think the number was that high, but it was definitely higher than 30 or 35. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Details. But that car was just such a fun car to drive. Someone's saying he's got the video of him in that Demon Totally Geeked Out. X is asking, how did it feel driving a Demon? The interesting thing about driving a Demon is the first thing that you notice is how soft the suspension is. But even more to the point than that. So at that point in time, all I had driven were Hellcats. And they were Hellcats in varying stages of tuning. It could be a stock car with a tune, something not totally like mine, but, somewhat similar to my car. Anything from that all the way to stroker motor Whipple cars, so it was like, how do you compare it to that? It's such a broad, spectrum, right? The one thing about the Demon that I picked up on right away was that bigger supercharger making a little bit more power, but it felt like the difference between driving a small block car and a big block car, going from a 262 gear stock boost Hellcat to what comes in them, a 309 gear larger supercharger making more boost Hellcat. So it would be like the difference between driving like a good running small block and a proper running big block. Both of them in the same level of tune, if you will, performance-wise. But the first thing you would notice driving the car was that it was peppy, just a happy car. The suspension is soft, and so you driving around in drag mode, the car would kind of float like a Chrysler Imperial. I used to love it. If you're going from here to there, I would never even get on it in the car on the street. It was just driving the thing. It was just so comfortable to drive. So that's one of the first things I learned about that. The next thing that I noticed about it was the car is just, it would just, for whatever reason, the vibe of that car always put me in a good mood. And a lot of the reason for that is that the suspension is softer, but it has the softer front sway bar. And so the car, the way that it would handle, it didn't handle bad. It just felt like, and the other thing that I liked about it is that the suspension modes were different, like the street mode versus sport, track. All of it was different in the way that the Hellcat isn't, because of that real heavy front sway bar that's on the Hellcats. That part, by the way, is what guys with scat packs and RTs will put in their car if they want it to handle much better. That's the sway bar they go with. Well, the Demon doesn't have that, and neither does the Super Stock. And so it's just a more compliant ride, but it's a proper ride. It doesn't, the problem with the Hellcat from the factory is that it feels very rigid. It doesn't feel like, it feels like somebody that's dancing, like, but they're stiff, like they're flexed up, like they're nervous in a way. And it's a nose of the car, front of the car, rear of the car imbalance with the Hellcat that gives you kind of an odd sense of a lack of connection with that car. Whereas you don't get that same vibe from the Demon or the Super Stock or my car now, a Hellcat with a scat pack sway bar. the 253 bar, if I'm remembering the number correctly. You don't get that same vibe because there's a little bit more compliance up front with that sway bar. So it's not like this where it just you're kind of dipping the thing on the spring and that's it. It's got a little bit of compliance, so it actually corners better, believe it or not. It feels like it's more connected to the road, but it's more intuitive. It's more balanced that way. So it was actually kind of not that it was necessarily better, but it felt more balanced than the Hellcats did. So, kind of take that how you will. It's kind of hard to describe. It's one of these things where you almost have to experience it, or, if you've driven one and then drive the next one right afterwards, you're like, oh, I get it. But if you drive the Hellcat, you'll notice that it's stiffer by nature because it's got a different spring pack, but you won't be able to put your finger on why it doesn't feel as poised as it should. And then you drive a car with a more compliant, properly valved shocks to go with the springs, but most importantly, because they both have that, but the sway bar itself, you're like, oh, okay, so softer springs, more compliant, allows it to sit down a little bit better in the corners. And if you stiffen up the shocks, it just is a firmer ride, not a stiffer ride. There's a difference. And so again, trying to I don't know, how do I say it? Trying to explain it is just kind of tough. Sovereign saying somebody bought a destroyed Demon. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a few of those. Oh, X is asking, I wonder why they changed the suspension on the Demon in the Super Stock to make it transfer weight better at the drag strip. Someone saying, so sad. Yeah, I hate to see stuff like that. And that's another reason why I never really took my car all that far. If I'm being honest, yeah, I had seen, and listen, this is where I can say that I really did benefit quite a bit. When you work at a shop, you learn what, like, I can give you guys the best advice in the world as far as what to do to your cars to make them quicker, faster, some tips and tricks with tuning that can sometimes help you get there. But one of the best things that I learned about working with Alex and working at Pikes Performance, I'm still good friends with him. We still, help him if he ever needs me to help him. But one of the things that I learned the most working there was you can screw one of these cars up real quickly if you take it in just a slightly, like just a little bit of a wrong direction. You know what I mean? So, with the Mopars, the go big or go home thing, it's one of these things where you can go too big. You really can. And my favorite cars, like if I were to say, like, what's my favorite combination? My car is my favorite combination. Stock boost, 93 octane, something that you're not throwing a lot of timing at. You're just basically, really with mine, removing some timing in a couple of key areas, by the way. I don't want to give the baby out with a bathwater on this, but from the stock tune, I actually ended up removing a degree of timing at a spot where I could not fathom. I could not understand why I was getting knock retard. It was legit knock retard in one spot. And I was like, okay, I'm going to pull the timing and see what happens. And anyway, I did, and it quit. So, but my favorite combination would have been like Excessive, Racer X's car, what we call a Bravo package. And that is one of the most fun combinations if you are an experienced advanced level driver. That car, for somebody like Racer X, myself, Behemoth, um, any of us that have been around these cars for any real length of time that have got multiple 9-second, mid 9-second, low 9-second passes, things like that. If you are in that category of experience level, my car would just be entertaining. But those cars are fun because there's just power everywhere, man. They just never quit making power. So, but that was one of my favorite combinations to just get out and drive. I was just saying, the life of a tuner. You'd be surprised. You know, it's one of those weird things. You know, people say, "Well, what did you like the most about it?" The solitude of it. To be honest with you, people say, "Oh, it's the people." There were nights where it'd just be me and Alex or just myself at the shop. I'd be stuck with a car and I might be putting, you know, finishing up a transmission tune, or there was a few cars where it was needed to put a tune together for nitrous or something. Goofy stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. But then it would be some of the NA stuff. And I would be trying to figure out what's the secret sauce, man. How do I get even more out of these cars? You have to remember, at this point in time, we had already set national records. And so we were running low 11s with stock cammed scat packs and 392 SRT cars. So, and that's on stock exhaust, by the way, with just a cat delete. So there was a lot going on back then that we were on top of this whole Mopar thing, and everybody was chasing us. And so I would take the tunes, put the tune together, have the car on the dyno, and just be going power sweep after power sweep after power sweep. What is it like timing wise? What about fueling? Can I get away with this? Nope. Can I do so anyway? So it was it's funny. Anytime I get a notification on my phone, I've got the fart thing. So anyway, if you've ever wondered what's on my phone, that's the shot that's on mine. But anyway, it was fun because, you know, you would have the ability to just nerd out at your own pace. And I don't think anybody's touched any of our numbers. Nobody really goes after these numbers though anymore. Nobody's like you don't see people actively chasing a lot of these numbers anymore. But was it 1118? 1118 or 1117? In what was more or less just a slightly race prepped, tuned scat pack. So I was saying, some people see a car as just a car, others as an extension of themselves. I got you, bud. Oh, Ardell's got to check out. Thank you for hanging out, man. Speed Manix asking if I think I'll be coming up his way to Evadale. It's actually a pretty cool track. Prep on Saturday is on point. Probably will be. Probably will be making it out there. Yeah, I know Mills and Josh. So, yeah, I probably will be going out there. Going out there to get my ass kicked is probably what will happen, but it's all good. Siren sound. Was wondering what that sound was. Oh, probably people running by here. Sovereign saying later, Ardell. And with that, guys, we're coming up on about an hour and a half. I do have to get up early, so I've got to wrap it up. Guys, you know the drill. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. You're going to sit and don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. And with that, my friends, we're going to get on out of here. Love each and every one of you guys. Would not do this without you. We will catch you on the next one. And Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. I understand this time of year can be rough. Don't let it get to you. It's just another day, buddy. You got this. And with that, Now we're going to get out of here. That's a wrap. Adios.